Guru and Shri Gauranga. All good. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Hare Krishna. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Today we'll continue our study of Srimad Bhagavatam. We're in the third canto, 15th chapter, entitled Description of the Kingdom of God. And this is verse number 30. Tan vikshavat rasanam chat.
That's good.
Tan vikshavata rasanam chatura kumaran Ridhan Dashardha Vayaso Viditatmatatvan Vetrena Chaskalayatam Tad Arhanangs Tau Tejo Vihasya Bhagavat Pratikula Shilao Tan Vikshavata Rasanams Chatura Kumaran Ridhan Dasardha Vayaso Viditat Matatvam Vetrena Chas Kalayatam Atad Arhanangstau Tejo Vihasya Bhagavat Pratikula Shilao Tan Vikshavata Rasanam Chatura Kumaran Ridhan Dashardha Vayaso Viditatmatatvan Vetrena Chas Kalayatam Attad Hanangs Tau Tejo Vihasya Bhagavat Pratikula Shilao. Please chant.
Tan vikshyavat rasanam chatura kumaran Ruddhan dashartha vayaso viditatma tattvan Pitrena chakshalayatam atadarhanam stau Tejo vihasya bhagavat pratikula shilau.
Hare Krishna. Sandhikshaya bata rasanam chatur kumaran Viddhan dasadha bhayaso viditatma tattam Vitrena chakshalayatam atad arhanasyam tau Tejo vyashaya bhagavata pratikula silau. Hare Krishna.
Tanvikshyavad rasanam Chaturakumaram Vridhan Dasharatha Dasharadha Vidhan Dashadha Vayaso Viditatma Tatvan Vitrena Chakshak Kalayatam Atad Ashtanamasto Tejo Vihasya Bhagavad Pratikula Silo. Hare Krishna.
Yavatarasanam Shaturakumaran Vridhan Dashartha Vayaso Viditatma Tattvan Vetrena Chashkalayatam Atad Arhanam Stau Tejo Vihasya Bhagavat Pratikula Shilau.
Hare Krishna. Tan vikshaya rasam chaturaha kumaran वृत्तान् दशारथ वयसो विदितात्मतत्त्वान् वित्रेण चाकलयतामहतद् अर्हाणां स्ताव तेजो विहस्य भगवत् प्रतिकूल स्थलाओ. हरे कृष्ण. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Tan, them. Bhiksha, after seeing. Vatarasanan, naked. Chaturaha, 4. Kumaran, boys. Vrididhan, aged. Dasha Ardha, 5 years. Vayasaha, appearing as of the age. Vidita, had realized. Atmatattvan, the truth of the self. Vetrena, with their staffs. Cha, also. Askalayatam, forbade. Atat ardhanan, not deserving such from them. Tau, those 2 porters. Tejaha, glories. Vihasya, disregarding the etiquette. Bhagavat pratikula shilau, having a nature displeasing to the Lord. Translation by Abhaycharan Aravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The 4 boys, who had nothing to cover their bodies but the atmosphere, looked only 5 years old, even though they were the oldest of all living creatures and had realized the truth of the self. But when the porters, who happened to possess a disposition quite unpalatable to the Lord, saw the sages, they blocked their way with their staffs, despising their glories, although the sages did not deserve such treatment at their hands. Pardon me. Purport. The 4 sages were the firstborn sons of Brahma. Therefore, all other living entities, including Lord Shiva, are born later and are therefore younger than the 4 Kumaras. Although they looked like 5-year-old boys and traveled naked, the Kumars were older than all other living creatures and had realized the truth of the self. Such saints were not to be forbidden to enter the kingdom of Vaikuntha, but by chance the doormen objected to their entrance. This was not fitting. The Lord is always anxious to serve sages like the Kumaras, but in spite of knowing this fact, the doormen astonishingly and outrageously prohibited them from entering. From entering. Translation again. The 4 boy sages, who had nothing to cover their bodies but the atmosphere, looked only 5 years old, even though they were oldest. They were the oldest of all living creatures and had realized the truth of the self. But when the porters, who happened to possess a disposition quite unpalatable to the Lord, saw the sages, they blocked their way with their staffs, despising their glories, although the sages did not deserve such treatment at their hands. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pacharne Nirvishesha Shunyvari Pachachadeshatane Om Agnanativirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So, 3 chapters ago, we talked a little about the 4 Kumaras and their particular qualities. They, being the firstborn sons of Lord Brahma, were requested by their father to create progeny and populate the newly formed universe. Right? Brahma knew what his service was, so he created the universe, and then naturally he wanted those who he was creating to help him with his service to create populations so that the newly formed universe can be filled, right? But even then, they were not interested in anything but cultivating knowledge on the path of transcendence. So, since they had a higher purpose, they were free to cultivate and then eventually teach transcendental knowledge, right? So we remember that happening, and then of course, as a result of that, then Rudra was born, and then another problem came into being. This was just a few chapters ago, so we should all remember that. But these great sages, they had no interest in mundane affairs, and therefore they just roamed around, completely free from material attachments. They were Atmaramas, completely satisfied in the self, with no external needs or desires. They didn't even feel the need to cover their bodies, right? They had no sense of possessiveness, no sense of proprietorship, nothing like that. As it says in the verse, their bodily covering was nothing but the atmosphere, right? And since they had no sense of possessiveness whatsoever, gates and doors meant absolutely nothing to them. Gold and precious gems had no more value than anything else that they've encountered. They understood that everything is Brahman, and they acted accordingly, right? Nothing's theirs, but nothing's anyone else's anyway besides Brahman, right? So they didn't treat anything as if it were theirs. They didn't try to accumulate or acquire anything, but they roamed around freely, not considering anything of more or less value. It should be noted that the 4 Kumaras are empowered incarnations of the Lord. That means that they are entrusted or empowered with transcendental knowledge. They are among the 12 Mahajans, meaning collectively the 4 of them are one of the 12 Mahajans. They stick together, so they can be counted as one, since they are a group, always a group. They are also collectively the head of one of the 4 Vaishnava Sampradayas. So they're highly elevated sages. But these sages, up to this point in the story that we're reading today, they didn't really have experience of the Lord's transcendental form, meaning his personal feature. Although they did hear about it from their father, their attachment so far to this point was on the Lord's impersonal feature. And so that's what they meditated upon in their hearts. And they were quite satisfied with that, being on that Brahma Bhuta platform, being fully situated in this consciousness. These elevated souls were qualified to roam about freely, no restrictions, right? In this material world, even just here on Bhumandala, even just within the smallest central island of Bhumandala called Jambudweep, there are 9 subsections, and we human beings are contained to one of them. We don't have the qualifications to go to any of the other ones because they require more piety. They are heavenly, especially the the central of that one, Ilavrita Varsha. It's where the Devatas will sometimes, uh, you would say, kind of vacation, right? The uh, trees are huge and they give an unlimited supply of the most wonderful fruits with uh, very thin skin, no or very little pit. It's just a very juicy fruit with none of the stuff that, here in our realm we try to avoid by peeling them and then, most of it being taken up by this big pit. Um, the rivers are flowing with nectar that grant immortality, uh, etc. It's a very heavenly um, place. Um, and so, uh, depending on our level of advancement, we can't even roam around in this small central island of Bhumandala, let alone the rest of it, or the heavenly planets, or the subterranean heavenly planets, etc. So we're very much restricted. But these four Kumaras on the Brahmabhuta platform, being fully situated on that platform, are qualified not only to roam about freely within the material realm, but they were also qualified, even though they didn't know much about, or they didn't have so much interest necessarily in Vaikuntha, not having a realized understanding of its superiority or its true nature. Um, they were certainly qualified to go there, being completely detached from material nature and attached to at least the Brahman aspect of the Supreme Lord. Right. So having nothing to hold them back, they were free to do so. Now we have examples of other great sages like Narada and Durvasa, who have also displayed this ability to travel to the spiritual realm without the need of mechanical devices. And in fact, uh, no material device can actually get one to the spiritual world. You can't build a stairway to heaven, as some people try. One has to be qualified by purifying oneself of all material attachments, right? So they're quite qualified, right? So although these transcendental perpetual toddlers had no material desires, they didn't strive to accumulate anything. Um, Even though they were equipoised in happiness and distress, when they smelled the aroma of tulsi leaves, which were on Lord Vishnu's feet, they became intrigued and they sought it out because they wanted to understand it. Right. Now, this isn't like how we would see, and forgive me if some of you didn't watch cartoons when you were young. I don't mean to contaminate your consciousness. When I was young, I watched a lot of cartoons. And in these cartoons, so many different ones actually, there's a common theme where if someone wanted to lure someone either to something or away from something else, they would, make a nice pie, something, some sort of, favorite food. It didn't have to be a pie, but generally it was. And from that pie, this, sort of aromatic trail would find its way to whoever was meant to be distracted. And at the end of this aromatic trail, there would be this hand that would be, waving them, come this way. And then the cartoon would basically start floating up. They'd be dragged by this aromatic trail completely off the ground with bulging eyes and their tongue sticking out. They'd be just lured by the smell of their favorite food. So for the Kumars, it wasn't like that because they're nothing, being equipoised and unattached. They weren't attracted to anything material, right? So they understood that there was something beyond material about this particular smell. So the Kumars, they were lured actually by curiosity, right? Because essentially they're Gyanis at this point. not with a desire to enjoy it, but with a desire to understand it. There's an important distinction there. It was unlike anything they'd ever experienced before, and it was causing them to feel spiritual bliss. They're experiencing something that they understood isn't a material emotion or feeling. And so they were compelled to find out why this aroma was so transcendently attractive beyond anything that can be experienced in the material realm, right? So, uh, again, being properly qualified, they very easily entered the first six gates of Vaikuntha. But when they got to the seventh gate, the attendants there prohibited them from going any further. That's the verse we're on today. With their staffs, they blocked these little children sages' path, and they said, "No, you can't go any further." Now, it is said in this verse that the porters, the gatekeepers, they happened to possess a disposition which was quite unpalatable to the Lord, and it's also said that they despised the glories of the Kumaras. Right? This may seem quite strange since we just established that the qualification to have access to Vaikuntha is that one has to be free from material desires, including but not limited to possessiveness, envy, hatred, and so on. So the fact that these porters exhibited these traits, uh, as Srila Prabhupada pointed out in his purport, was both astonishing and outrageous, right? How could it be? How could that even happen, right? One might wonder that, and one would be right to wonder that because this is a very strange sort of phenomenon that could happen there. So, but in this verse, we get a little insightful hint as to why this could happen, right? In both the verse and the purport, actually. Um, in the verse, it mentioned that they happen to possess that disposition, and in the purport, it said that by chance they objected. So these terms happen to and by chance indicate that some other factors were at play here to make this astonishing and outrageous event take place. Now, this reason, of course, it'll be revealed in the upcoming verses. Those who know, know, but I don't want to step on someone else's class. So for now, I just want to focus on talking about the concept of sometimes things happening that are quite out of the ordinary with no apparent explanation, right? I think that's a good thing to talk about today without giving something away or taking over someone else's class. So we see this happen sometimes, right? Sometimes for no obvious reason, things seem to be going so strangely and out of the ordinary, right? People are acting out of character or something like that. And we may not be able to fathom why this particular thing is happening, right? And oftentimes it's when we see something bad happen to good people, right? We're just so accustomed to, a person always doing the right thing and things going, their way, or at least semi smoothly, and then something terrible or surprising will happen, and it just doesn't track with our understanding of how the world is meant to work or how it usually works, right? It's something that's out of the ordinary, and it seems strange. And so I think most of us have witnessed or even directly experienced something like this before. And of course, it can be confusing, right? Sometimes even daunting. So doubts and fears can overwhelm us and challenge our faith, even in some circumstances, and our conviction, right? When we see something like this going on, when we have an idea of how the world works, and we know the character of certain individuals, and somehow, despite all of that, things seem to go in a very, what were the two words? Astonishing or outrageous way. And uh, it's bewildering. It's bewildering to us. And again, I think we've all experienced this or at least witnessed it. But if we truly have firm faith, then we will understand, or if we truly have firm faith and we understand that not even a blade of grass moves without the will of Sri Krishna, then whatever is happening, we will know that it's happening for a good reason. And so if we strive to serve Krishna with full determination, even though we may not understand why something is happening the way that it's happening, then no matter what it is that's happening, we will know that it is undoubtedly the way that it's meant to go, right? And we'll continue our service with detachment, completely relying on Krishna alone to guide us through the various obstacles of confusion and fear and doubt and so on. Sometimes something has to be destroyed so that something stronger can be built in its place, right? I'll give an example of a situation like this where something seems to be happening completely out of character and it seems unfair, unjust, uh, and so on. So here we're reading this Srimad Bhagavatam. We have the great fortune, great benefit to have access to this uh, uh, Bhagavat Purana, the spotless Purana that teaches nothing but pure devotional service, right? It instructs those who are striving just to surrender to Krishna and serve him favorably, unmotivated, uninterrupted, without any sort of distractions whatsoever, right? So this Srimad Bhagavatam is there for those who are striving to do this, and so it's just direct spirituality explained for the benefit of those who uh, are are striving to distinguish reality from illusion and then act accordingly, act according to that reality under Krishna's shelter. But the reason that we have this, one of the reasons there's so many reasons why we have this benefit. Of course, the one that applies to all of us is Srila Prabhupada's desire to serve, or his need, his attachment to serve his spiritual master, and to come or to travel to the West to preach and to preach, to establish a worldwide movement where the Srimad Bhagavatam is accessible to the whole world. But another, of the many reasons that this Srimad Bhagavatam is available is because Maharaj Parikshit, who was such an exemplary character in all aspects. He's the emperor of the world, and he wouldn't tolerate any at all, any whatsoever deviation from the laws of Dharma, right? Uh, Everyone had to act properly. Everyone was guided in such a way that they could act properly. But if someone for any reason whatsoever tried to act outside of Dharma, he would correct that, right? So Maharaj Parikshit, right, uh, who who is always doing the right thing, quite dharmic, and who's also, like the Kumars mentioned here, unaffected by really material nature, right? Lord Krishna saved him in the womb because he knew, such a great devotee, all that, and he's always seeking after that supreme Lord that saved him in the womb. He's always, uh, anyway. So, uh, one of the features of a great soul like this is that they're not bothered by the dualities of the material world. Yet somehow, by providence, somehow, what are the two words that were here? I think one was by chance, and the other one was, yeah, happened to, and by chance. In the verse, it was happened to, and then in the purport, it was by chance. So, but in the context of Maharaj Parikshit, somehow he happened to, by chance, become so overwhelmingly thirsty that he had to go enter into the cottage of a sage who was meditating, right? And although the sage was meditating, somehow, by chance, by providence, Maharaj Parikshit, who wouldn't become angry in any circumstance, even in the face of an enemy, let alone a sage a respectable sage who's meditating, somehow he was inspired from within to become offended, angry, and to act externally by picking up a dead snake with his bow and draping it around the neck of the sage uh, for not observing the proper etiquette of giving a guest water, right? Because it's compulsory for anyone receiving a guest to give them a nice place to sit, a drink of water at least, and greet them with kind words, right? So this is just the bare minimum that is given with any visitor. So all of these happen by chance, right? And of course, we know then, although this great sage didn't think anything of this dead snake, it wasn't a big deal. The son of that Brahmana became very offended, and he cursed Maharaj Parikshit to die 7 days later by the bite of a snake bird, right? And of course, Maharaj Parikshit, he didn't try to argue it. He said, "Okay, that's fine. I accept this curse," right? Because it was providence that made it happen. It wasn't that Maharaj Parikshit was having a bad day, something that he, really treasured was taken from him, so he was lamenting, or he was hankering for something that he didn't have that he wanted. No, no, he's transcendentally situated, but because of providence, because of some higher purpose, some other reason, these things happen. We also have the example of Queen Kunti. So many things went wrong in her life. And of course, um, not only did she not mind it, she was quite happy when these things would happen, because when those calamities occurred, she focused more on Krishna, on relying on Krishna, and was less distracted by mm, just life happening. Right. So we see examples of things that just seem to be going a very different way than what we would expect them to go. But devotees understanding that this is what is meant to happen. This is what Krishna is desiring, right? It's providence. Something completely out of the ordinary is pushing the story into a certain uh, on a certain path that normally wouldn't happen. Maharaj Parikshit becoming thirsty, uh, such a pious Queen Kunti being, going through all the various calamities, um, various attempts on their lives, Queen Kunti and her sons. Right. So from this all, we can understand that when we see something strange or out of the ordinary happening, what we generally do in our conditioned state, because of our conditioned natures, we generally jump to various conclusions and make claims that it can only mean this, right? It has to be because of this. This is the only thing it could mean, right? Maharaj Parikshit was envious of all the brahmanas, and therefore, he picked up this snake and yada yada, right? And then, of course, someone else who is observing the situation, they say, no, 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 no. It could only mean that, right? And then so arguments about this and that can continue not only over decades, but even over generations, right? There are many examples of feuds, altercations, arguments lasting over generations. And people don't even remember what the initial fight was about. They just know that our side and your side are, don't agree no matter what. So we're just going to argue no matter what, right? And so we see this happens in the material world where, we see something strange that's occurring. We try to explain it by our own logic and perception. And then someone else from a different perspective is trying to explain it from their logic and perception. And then we disagree, and then we just fight about it, make accusations, demand justice, etc. Because we all have an abundance of tools to use in various circumstances, these tools being our senses, our experiences, our values, our belief systems, our sense of right and wrong, and so on. The tools that we use to get to the bottom of life's mysteries, what we use to try to figure out what is going on and what is to be done. We have an abundance of these tools. But we should understand that there are inferior tools and there are superior tools, right? And not all tools are meant to fix everything. Some tools have a specialized function. Srila Prabhupada and our spiritual masters and the sadhus that we have the great fortune of associating with, they have all given us the tools to transcend material nature and to join Sri Krishna in his loving pastimes. The other tools that we have accumulated over countless lifetimes are produced from the modes of nature, and therefore they're not suitable to actually fix our problem of being in the material world, right? They can only change the problem within the material world. They can't fix it, right? Because our problem is that we don't belong here, right? But any tools that we have accumulated over these countless lifetimes in the material world are going to be influenced by the modes of material nature. So at best, they can help us to get a better material situation temporarily. But because of their nature of being material, those tools, they can only offer a material result. Whereas the tools given by Srila Prabhupada and authorized disciplic succession are designed to help us solve the problem of material existence and to get out of it, right? And so these are the tools that we should always be using. The other tools, we should understand that they can serve a purpose, but it's not a purpose that we're actually interested in, right? We aspiring Vaishnavas are not interested in making life a little less horrible for a brief period of time and then, using the tools again later to again try to make life a little less terrible, right? So, in all circumstances, no matter what we're dealing with, what issues we're trying to resolve or figure out or understand, in all circumstances, if we rely not on our imperfect sense perception, mundane logic, and sense of justice, but instead we rely on the information that we've received in bona fide disciplic succession from the Shastra, and uninfluenced by our personal material motivations, then the truth will eventually be revealed to us. All right. Uh, until then, we are meant to have faith and continue our cultivation of bhakti. Everything will be revealed to us. Anytime we see, what were the two words? I think it was astonishing. Outrageous and astonishing. I think we see something outrageous and astonishing. If we employ the tools that Srila Prabhupada has given us, and if we sharpen those tools with further cultivation of understanding of Shastra, under the guidance of the spiritual master and through the examples of the sadhus, then we will be able to understand Krishna's will and why things are going the way that they're going, right? But if we try to fix these issues that we're observing that are outrageous and I keep forgetting the other word, astonishing. If we try to rectify these outrageous and astonishing things that we're encountering with our mundane tools of sense perception and logic and reasoning and sense of right and wrong, values, etc., then at best, we can only make the world slightly better for a very brief period of time, right? So it's better to understand Krishna's will, and with faith, cultivate an understanding of what Krishna wants in general. And then eventually we'll be able to see what Krishna wants specifically of us, right? So if we base all of our thoughts, words, and actions, if we inform all of those things, our thoughts, words, and actions, by Shastra, authorized Shastra, and understanding it not with a material motive, right? Because one can approach Shastra with a material motive to also to enjoy better or to have some sort of position, respect like that. Or one can approach Shastra to try to justify one's behavior or try to uh, uh, give validation to some sort of material attachment that we have. But if we approach Shastra in a way that instead of, trying to basically adjust the Shastra to suit our life, to interpret it so that the way we want to live our life is supported. If instead we try to adjust our lives to become in line with what Shastra is giving, right? So with a humble, submissive way, understand from the spiritual master how the Shastra is to be understood. And if we inform all of our thoughts, words, and actions on that bona fide representation of the Shastra, then we will eventually solve our problem. We will be able to understand why bad things sometimes happen to good people, why sometimes a situation will be going so smoothly, but then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, some astonishing and outrageous thing happens. We'll be able to be guided by that, right? So, in all circumstances, we should hold tightly onto our understanding of Shastra, and we should always be cultivating it further because this world is a bewildering place. So many things are going on like that. And so the more prepared we are with these valuable tools, and the more we sharpen them by constant cultivation, then the easier it will be for us to develop, to uncover this actual state of detachment that we read about with the four Kumaras and Maharaj Parikshit, right? We will be able to reach the Brahmabhuta stage if we use these tools in all circumstances, the tools that are given to us by Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. So this is where I will stop to see if there are any questions or comments or discussion. Anyone have anything to add? Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Nice points you told us. And then, yes, I heard that Kunti Maharani, she always wanted calamities so that she can think of Krishna. So that's what I always feel, we all human beings, when we have calamity and something in the life like that, We always think, oh, Krishna, I need some help. Oh, Krishna, why is it happening to me? Like that, we always tell him. But when we have good things, thank you, Krishna, we won't say. Mostly we won't say thank you. Just that time we don't call Krishna. Calamities time we call Krishna. So there's a right word she said, Kunti Maharani. Yes, give me calamities, give me calamities. I'll keep on thinking of you. So that was one thing I always think of that. So what is this life, and then in younger time, I used to think we have to all the time. If we have good things, there is no life. This thing we have like that sour and hot and sweet and everything, all kinds. Then we can realize what is this difference is there.
Mm.
That's what I always think. For our New Year, we make one chutney with all those ingredients.
Mm.
We put neem flowers, we
Mm.
put tamarind, we put mango, we put a little bit jaggery. Like
Very-
that, we make a chutney. So sometimes, if when we are young, sometimes when we eat, oh, mom, it is too sour. I don't want to eat. And like that, we used to tell my mom. My mom used to say, "No, if you feel sour, your life, this you have to take care of all that sourness also. So bitter, all kinds of tastes. We used to mix it and then make the chutney. The way we taste, the way we feel, then we
Mhm.
used to think, oh, this year will be like that for us. That's how we used to. That reminds me now.
Nice.
So,
I got to try that. It's a nice meditation to at the beginning of the year to understand that life is going to throw at you all
yeah.
sorts of variety, and you just have to be able to overcome them without being disturbed. It's nice.
It automatically comes, we just don't measure anything in that. But it automatically comes the taste. So we used to think like that. And life is like that. We have to have all kinds of things up and down, up and down.
Yeah.
Not that only good things will happen and then we can live this life.
Yeah, whatever reminds us of Krishna, that's what we should strive after until everything reminds us of Krishna.
Yeah.
And then when everything reminds us of Krishna, then we're all right. Then nothing's out of the ordinary because we know that, okay, no, this is all done for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Something outrageous and astonishing will happen. And it's not really outrageous and astonishing because, it's Krishna acting and,
Yeah.
we're just his puppets. So we can be his voluntary puppets and, act favorably in his service, or we can involuntarily be his puppets and be perpetually in the material world, suffering repeatedly, being drug around by the modes of material nature.
Yeah. So Krishna is the one who knows everything. He decides everything for us.
Yes, very good. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much for people. Nice. And then about four Kumaras also, they are very happy. They don't want to be in this material world and they want to be, they're just small babies. They're happy. But people, we outside, we see, we think that what is that? They are not enjoying anything.
Yeah.
Anyway, the way you're sitting, it's very cold, Prabhu.
Yeah. After a couple weeks, I'll go to Pennsylvania and spend some time there.
Yeah, that's good. Welcome.
It'll be warmer. Here I just don't have any heat yet.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Just my realization is that, when, how they say, if one door closes, another door opens. It is difficult to remember that, though, when you're going through that difficulty. And you have said this, you have answered my question with this many times before. It's devotee association and sanghas like this, where we can remind ourselves there is a reason why Krishna is doing what he's doing, and we just don't know. We keep asking why, why, and Krishna knows why. We just don't understand it. I think sometimes the difficulty is also when you have to take sides of a situation. When it is happening to yourself, I think it is probably a tiny bit easier to say, you know what, I don't know why, but Krishna knows why, and so I will try my best to go along. But when you are in the middle of something and you have to, that is when I think it's so much harder to, because I think then the idea is, do we just sit back and just watch what's happening, or is it my duty? Is it my, should I be taking on that responsibility? I don't know. I mean, still a difficult situation, I think.
It is a very difficult situation. We see in Shastra, early on in Srimad Bhagavatam, when we covered this, we understood the story of Ashvatthama. There was a lot of taking sides that occurred. I even took a side personally on whether or not this severe offender, should be killed or not. And the thing is with sides is that usually, in most cases, it's not that one side's right and the other side's wrong. We like to think that, and so we pick what we consider to be the right side. But in the material world, it's all duality. And in the material world, there actually is no right side, right? We have to have a transcendental understanding. So that can be more supported by one side or the other, depending on the circumstance of the situation. But we can't claim philosophically that one side materially is superior to the other, because depending on one's consciousness or one's understanding, the other side might actually be more beneficial. So when we come in contact with something like that, we have to try to understand in principle what is going to be best for my cultivation of devotional service. And sometimes that might mean supporting one side. It might mean supporting both sides. It might mean supporting one side, but not claiming to be on that side, just, understanding and appreciating the aspect of it. We may have to make a decision one way or the other. It may be a binary thing like that, where we have to make a decision one way or the other, where we decide that one way is best for us, but we also understand that the other way can be better for someone else. So therefore, we're not going to try to advertise that this way is the only way, for example. Because we see many times that the answer is both. You have to both kill Ashvatthama and also not kill Ashvatthama. So there was a way that successfully they were able to do that, which you should satisfy everyone. But in the material world, no one's ever satisfied.
Yes.
You can't satisfy everyone in the material world. Someone's going to be upset, right? So we just need to base our understanding not on what's going to upset other people or what our material senses or perception have led us to understand, but through the instructions of Shastra, how we are to view this thing, what's going to be more favorable for my growth in Krishna consciousness. Can I see that for somebody else, the other decision might be better for their Krishna consciousness? If that's the case, then I'm not going to take a firm stand. I may make an obvious choice because it's binary, But I'm not going to make a firm stand and try to demand that everyone else do it because I'll understand that, it could go either way. All right. So generally in these things, yeah, we basically try to stay out of them, right? Because we're meant to be non-disturbed by the dualities. We're meant to be equipoised, right? So that's easier said than done. Sometimes we have an attachment, and if we do, okay, but we should understand that that's a material attachment and we shouldn't force that on anyone else. That's what most political matters are based on. And most political solution is to transcend those diametrically opposed propositions and actually get to the root of transcendence.
So I do understand that we have to see that not just my way is the right way because it may be right for me. But when you say what is good for my Krishna consciousness, I should do that. Isn't that selfish then?
No, it means it can be. It depends on how we're understanding. If it's based on Guru Sadhu Shastra, and it may even be against what we're desiring, it's absolutely not selfish. That's selfless, right? Because like I understand, for example, or I'll give an example. Someone who is an addict may understand that whatever they're addicted to is bad for them, right? If that level of understanding brings them to refrain or restrain themselves from that, it means they're going against what they really want to do, but that there's a higher purpose that's showing what is actually best for them. That's not selfish, right? If one is if one is motivated by, no, well, this is just what I want to do, then you make that decision. And that absolutely is selfish, right? It depends on what is our motivating factor? What's driving us? Is it an accurate understanding of the Shastra, or is it us trying to bend the Shastra to our will to support what our whim is? So early on, it's hard to distinguish between those two because the mind is very tricky. And if we don't know much about Shastra, the mind can convince us that, we're actually following Shastra when we're actually following our whims, which is why it's important for us to continuously cultivate a better understanding of Shastra through Guru and Sadhu so that eventually we'll be able to understand, we'll be able to see the mind as a stubborn child instead of an authority. Because early on, we take the mind as an authority,
Mhm.
right? And we just do whatever it says. But as we cultivate our intelligence through understanding of Shastra under the guidance of a spiritual master, uh, then we start understanding what the mind's actually doing. And then it's just more like a stubborn kid trying to get its way. And then we have the tools to deal with it, right? So that's the thing is if anytime we see something that's surprising or strange, something that we have to figure out, we just have to examine what tools we're reaching for, right? If we're reaching for the the tools of our conditioning, then that means we're not actually looking for an actual solution to it. We're just looking for what's going to make us most comfortable, right? But if we're reaching for those tools of Shastra, then that means we're actually trying to understand it so we know how to act favorably in Krishna's service under this particular circumstance, right? Because under different circumstances, we will act in a different way, right? So Arjuna, he's a Kshatriya by nature, so he'll fight a justified war. But if it's an unjustified war, so it happened to be that the Battle of Kurukshetra was a justified war. But if it was an unjustified war, he wouldn't have fought it because there's no need to, there's no reason to. Right? Kshatriyas don't just fight because they want to fight. Like, oh, someone wants to fight, great. Right? That's, they won't run from a fight, but they're not going to start fights just because, for a mundane reason. Well, I mean, some will, unfortunately, if they're not guided by brahmanas. But saintly kshatriyas are those actually following properly situated brahmanas are only going to fight justified uh, battles. So for us too, we have to understand that in certain circumstances, something that we would normally consider to be the right thing to do may not be the right thing in that particular circumstance. And so we have to know how to make that adjustment, right? And we become more and more expert the more we understand Shastra. All of these different pastimes that are given in Srimad Bhagavatam are essentially scenarios that we could come face to face with. And we will, if we're more informed about how to make that decision, not just what decision was made, but how that decision came to be understood and how it's always about what is best for serving Krishna, then, you know, the more we load up our toolbox with those transcendental tools and discard those material tools, then the better off we'll be in any circumstance, right? So it's just, you know, it's in our benefit to prepare ourselves for all of these things that life is going to throw at us, because after a while, we're not going to, you know, we, the spirit soul who are in these bodies, the bodies start losing certain capabilities, both physical and mental. And we can't think that whatever we have access to now, we're going to have access to later. So it's in our best interest to, when we have the opportunity, to cultivate this knowledge and intelligence so that we can become situated before we lose access to things like, you know, uh, memories and things like that, right? Or, you know, the end of life, right? So we should always be prepared. So every day, every moment, we should try at least to be using those shastric tools instead of these material tools at every moment. Every moment, we should be conscious of what's motivating us, what tools are we using, all right? And if we can do that, then even in these crazy, again, I forgot those. What was it? Astonishing and outrageous. Yeah. In these astonishing and outrageous circumstances, we'll be able to understand what is to be done. We won't be bewildered. We won't be, you know, getting up on a soapbox and saying, this must mean that, you know, blah, blah, blah. These, you know, just see, they were envious. They didn't even belong in Vaikuntha. Well, we'll find out later what the actual situation is. I mean, most of us in here already know what the situation was. We know the story, but for the sake of, you know, not spoiling anything. Yeah, no, we'll understand. If the more we're prepared with these tools of transcendence, the more we understand when the world does something crazy, right? And the world right now is pretty crazy, right? So those who have the right tools are able to understand it without being distracted by all of this, you know, material morality or material comfort or material whatever, right? So our goal is to just rely on Krishna. So that means we use the tools that he gave us, right? I mean, he gave us everything. He gave us the tools for material nature too, but we also understand their inferior quality, right? So we voluntarily uh, uh, hid or tried to hide from Krishna, and we're under the shadow where we're influenced by these three modes of material nature, and we have the tools where we can, you know, make our situation either better or worse within material nature, and then we also have the tools that we can get out of material nature, and we don't belong here, right? So we just do that. We focus on that. Then, if that's what we're focused on, and that's what all of our decisions are based on, then we're never going to make the wrong decision, right? Because it's not about the external situation, it's about the motive. So if whatever our motive is that, okay, yeah, this is going to be more favorable for my Krishna consciousness. If that's the reason we're making that decision, then it's the right decision, whether it was on one side of the pole, the other side of the pole, or totally avoiding both, right?
Thank you, Prabhu.
Sure. Anything else? Thank you for that, Sobhrati Mataji. This is a very important thing for us to understand. And it's something that we're faced with on a regular basis. So yeah, the more we talk about it, the more we understand it, the better off we are, the more prepared we are. So thank you for that. Dronacharya Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the wonderful class, and as always, it has generated a very practical conversation. And I guess the only thing I wanted to add to it, because you've already explained a lot from Shobharate's question. So when we experience conflict and we see it take place, and it's bewildering to us, especially when it takes place among two devotees that we tend to look up to or respect. So I guess depending on who they are and their level of advancement, and a lot of times we don't really know about that either. So from one perspective, I guess is the higher perspective. We say, okay, that Krishna has a plan here. Krishna's doing something. We can't necessarily understand why, but he's actually generating some type of change situation. At the same time, I guess could it also be true that maybe these individuals are acting on the platform of the false ego? Could they be experiencing some level of, could it really be envy that they're experiencing, or jealousy, or greed, or anger? And could two things be taking place at once? Like could they be purified or could they be being purified of their own material desires, and then also Krishna also at the same time saying, okay, I'm going to use these individuals as an opportunity? I guess it's hard to understand the latter, because it's hard to judge a person where they are. We're not the super soul, so we can't necessarily see what's really going on behind the scenes. I guess if we only see that this is Krishna doing things, and it's not that there's not the elements acting of of the false ego, does that also make us susceptible to justifying deviant behavior when it comes up, that this person performed this horrendous activity, but really it must have been Krishna? Anyway, there were kind of some thoughts there. Maybe you could speak to it.
It certainly can lead to that, and that's an unfortunate thing. So we also have to understand. Yeah, this is a very important topic to understand. So an Uttama Adhikari, for example, understands that Krishna is always the cause. So whether it's a mixture of um, uh, providence and providence mixed with actual desire, hate, anger, something like that, that was either laying dormant or just being hidden, etc. The Uttama Adhikari just sees it as Krishna acting, and he knows that every spirit soul, whether they're behaving properly or not, they're on their way to, they're everyone's Krishna's devotee, essentially. We're not Uttama Adhikaris, right? So we do have to use our intelligence, but our intelligence should be based on Shastra as much as possible, not based on logic, whims, perception, like that. So in these cases where, you have two devotees and they get into there's some sort of conflict between them, it's best to try to understand from both points of view what was going on, and we see what may have been motivating that behavior. And if it becomes actually clear to us, not just a thought or, if we get some solid verification that one of these, we'll call them aspiring Vaishnavas, was actually a pretender, and they're habitually engaging in this abominable behavior and trying to hide it. If we see that, then there's two things we could do. We can either distance ourselves from it because it's frightful, or we can, if we are strong enough and have a good enough relationship with them, we can help them cultivate, because they're around the devotees for a reason, right? They could be doing whatever they're doing elsewhere. There's something there that um, that Krishna actually appreciates. Otherwise, Krishna wouldn't have allowed them to be around for so long. So if that is focused on, and it may have to be focused on away from others because of the various habits. So if someone is actually in that position where they're able to help that particular individual to cultivate, to, fan that spark of Krishna consciousness, then they can also do that, right? But it shouldn't be, if someone's like on a neophyte platform and they see this, it's not that they can do anything like that. So it depends on all of these circumstances. We have to use our intelligence, but again, the intelligence has to be um, supported, not just supported by Shastra. It has to be based completely on Shastra, um, so that we have a actual full understanding of what's going on. So according to our level of understanding, we will be able to know what the right thing is for us to do. For some people, it may be to distance ourselves, or maybe even create other restrictions. Um, but for others, it may be to give some guidance, um, and allow the purification to take place. In other circumstances, it's just completely out of character, came out of nowhere, and as strange as it sounds and as difficult as it is for some people to do, it has to be, overlooked. And those who can't overlook it, they can't overlook it for a reason. So that's also providence, right? Krishna is behind everything. Um, uh, Not a blade of grass moves without his will. Uh, some people, again, when they see bad things happening to good people, they tend to try to adjust their philosophy to say that no, it's not that not a blade of grass moves without God's will. It's that, God is love, sure, he's all that, but somehow he must not have power under certain circumstances. So in this material world, for example, right? And so they'll invent philosophies that try to explain why, because of how they observed a bad thing happening to a good person. They try to say how no, God would have, saved the situation, but because of some sort of circumstance, he's unable to do so. So they come up with these different philosophies. I think the original one was called deism, where God is all powerful, but he doesn't have power in the material world. Krishna can do anything, but he gives us free will. So we have the proper understanding of it. Our philosophy provides us with the proper understanding that Krishna provides us with free will. If we choose to be independent from him, then we are sent to this material realm where we think we are independent. We have some sort of experience of independence from the Supreme Lord, where we can try to control and enjoy the things in our surroundings, unsuccessfully, of course, because we are not actually the controllers and enjoyers. We are by nature part and parcel of Krishna. So it's a very frustrating place to be. And so many horrendous things happen. Everything actually that happens in the material world is horrendous because we're acting against our material nature. And so some things are certainly more horrendous than others. And those who are aspiring on the path of righteousness, there should be uh, certainly there should be fewer instances of abominable and astonishing things. Astonishing and anyway, whatever the other one was, but also abominable works here. Um, And yeah, depending on what our level are, we're going to have to deal with these situations according to whatever our understanding of Shastra is. And the more we rely on those tools of Shastra, the more advancement we make. In those circumstances, the more we rely on our material senses, our material perception, our material sense of right and wrong and of justice, the more we rely on that, the less advancement we will make. So we may demand that, you know, this person be burned at the stake or whatever, but if it's based on material reasoning, then we're not going to make spiritual advancement, right? But there also is punishment given in the scriptures. So if we see that it's actually a justified punishment and there's someone that's qualified to mete out that punishment, to not only mete it out, but to judge it, right? And we see that it's not that everybody judges, it's that the saintly kings, they're the ones that understand what the situation is. They decide what the punishment should be, and then they mete that punishment out. If we're trying to figure out what the punishment should be and also mete that punishment out, and we're not saintly kings, then, we're also not doing the right thing. So we're not going to make any spiritual advancement on that. We may feel better about, helping to overthrow something that we thought was unjust, but that feeling better is going to be temporary because it's based on matter, right? So the point is, the principle here is that whatever we're deciding, whether it's punishment or forgiveness, or how much punishment or how much forgiveness, or what all that looks like, is, are we basing it on what we're understanding in Shastra, and are we approaching Shastra in a healthy way, that we're trying to understand what to do, not trying to justify what we want to do in this situation? That's the principle. If that's what we're being guided by, then we will make the right decision, and it will be uplifting spiritually. Otherwise, even though materially it may seem to be uplifting for a small time, it will not be uplifting spiritually, nor will it be uplifting in the long run materially. All right. Does that make sense? I hope that was a good enough answer.
Yeah, I feel very satisfied
Okay.
when I hear you talking like this. It's uh,
Yeah, it really depends on
it's very good.
the
Yeah,
situation,
no,
my level of understanding.
yeah, yeah. No, I appreciate you taking the time to explain that.
Sure.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
glad to do it because, yeah, oftentimes we hear what we spoke about in general earlier, but then we think, yeah, but what about this circumstance where this happened?
yeah.
And that's like, that just really, really shouldn't have happened. Not only should it not have happened, but it really, really, really shouldn't have happened. And then we
Right.
come up with, and so, I always try to bring it down to a principle. We could just bring up an example and try to discuss that, but then there's like emotional attachment to the sides. So in general, in principle, we just have to understand that whatever we are deciding to do, we're using those tools from Shastra and not the tools from material nature to come up with that decision. And the more we're able to do that, and early on, when we're neophytes, we're not able to do that because not only do we not have a proper understanding of Shastra, but we have a very strong attachment to our material tools, right? So early on, it's whatever bit of Shastric, influence, we use to make our decision, that's going to help us a little. But the more we're able to use that, the easier it becomes to deal with any circumstance, right? And those are the people, the ones that can actually deal with any circumstance. Those are the ones that should be assessing, judging, and figuring out what punishment should be, right? The ones that actually understand the principle of Shastra and can assess the situation, understand what's actually in play here. Is it just providence? Is it providence mixed with uh, latent desires? Is it just straight up someone was a complete pretender this whole time and they've been engaging in so many things? Right? Those are the people, the ones that understand it completely, that can assess and judge that, not the general public that's, mostly just basing most of their daily decisions on, you know, the tools they have in material nature. So if we understand that in principle, then we're in good shape. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And a lot of these, like, it's not appropriate in a public form to like bring up specific examples but some of these, like, you know, being able to share the specifics obviously helps frame the, like you kind of gave the general framework of how to evaluate the situation. And but yeah, like specific examples you can actually walk through and help guide a person.
Right. So
And
if one has a position of a counselor, for example, then one can actually go into these specific scenarios and explain how to apply basically the framework that I just set out, and sort of feel out where the other person's coming from to see if they're actually ready to use those tools or if they're not. And if they're not, then, you know, you just kind of, you know, you guide them in the best way they can to make the most healthy version, you know, of their decision. Because if you see that the attachment is there to make a very specific decision, then at least, you know, make sure the influence of as much influence as Shastra as possible is also being introduced into that, right? So counselors, yeah, they have, you know, and that's always a one-on-one situation, not a general thing. But yeah, these are important tools also for any counselor to understand, to properly give guidance. Thank you for that.
thank you very much, Chair Chandra.
Anything else? Okay. So then we can end here. I may be, it looks like I'll be at least in Pennsylvania for a decent part of December. So maybe I'll have the opportunity to see some of you in person. I look forward to that. I always enjoy seeing face to face the Philadelphia crew, and of course Radhashar Bihari. Most of all, they're always in my heart. Um, and so hopefully I'll be able to see some of you. Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai
Ki jai.
Jai.
Anand Vrinda ki jai.
Vanchakalpadasya kripasindhya
Jai.
Patitanam pavanebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Stay warm.
Welcome. See you.
Pennsylvania, Prabhu.
What's that?
When are you coming to Pennsylvania?
I think I'll be there for a pretty big part of December. I don't know about all of December,
Okay,
but
you don't have the dates finalized yet?
no, not finalized yet, but it should be like the beginning of December through, you know, at least for a few weeks.
Okay, cool.
So
Good.
something like that.
Welcome.
Okay, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Let us know if we can help you and serve you in any way.
Oh, well, let me know if I could serve you in any way.
Just giving the classes only, that helping us.
It's helping me too. It's my favorite.
We like to.
I have the great fortune of, so even though I'm here in the woods, right? Gop Kishore, a very nice devotee from New Jersey, he has the property next to me. So I'm at his place. And so he has internet, which is powered by solar. And so actually every day I can give class. So I've been doing for the school in Mayapur, the Bhaktivedanta Academy. I've been doing some Bhakti Shastri classes for the first year. And I've been doing the Shastra Chakshush classes for the fourth year. So every day I get to give a class and share all of the wonderful things I've learned from so many advanced devotees. So I'm quite fortunate that even though I'm becoming less and less capable to do physical activities, that Krishna is so kind, merciful to give me the opportunity to do this, and this is really helpful for me. So I'm quite happy with that. So thank all of you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare